Hi, everyone, and welcome to Pit Stop number 8. Today, Nuke and I are going to talk about leadership. Nuke, how you doing today?
I'm great, sir. How are you?
Very well, very well. And um, yeah, something that's really been on my mind recently is leadership. And, I'm excited to talk to you about it because I really do see you as a leader in our, the circles that we run in. And even I guess with the news that you're going to be stepping up and helping out more with the men's group that we're a part of, and just wanted to pick your brain a little bit about what it means to you.
Wow, hey man, thanks. I appreciate that. You know, I guess right away, leadership. What does it mean to me? I think for leader, like I figured out really, really quick that a leader is someone who you need to be willing to look up to, right? And
Yes. Yeah.
there needs to be. I don't want to say that level of respect, but people need to want to follow you, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's always what has been kind of my like in the back of my mind. And
Yeah.
necessarily the thing with leadership I realized is people don't have to be in positions of power for you to always have to follow them. And once I made
Yeah.
that distinction that like someone in power doesn't always have to be the leader, I was like, yo, anybody can be the leader then. Right?
Yep.
And I really like that idea then because that idea that you're born a leader or whatever is no, like you do small consistent steps every day that eventually compound. And then when you look back, you're like, oh wow, like I'm leading. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And I
go
no,
on,
go
sir.
ahead.
Go on. You go on.
I was just going to say, I think one of the most important words that stuck out to me there was when you said, people want to follow you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And which is such a different, a different take on it than they have to follow you.
For sure.
And that really spoke to me. Um, and the other thing when you were talking was just the small everyday steps.
Yes,
It
sir.
doesn't necessarily have to be this grandiose, like all of a sudden, oh, I'm a leader, right? It's small, seemingly insignificant steps, that you
Exactly.
can take every day.
Exactly, sir. And and the other part of that, Jared, like to me, when I think about leadership, is like a leader is doing it for himself first. Do you see what I'm saying? You're doing this work when no one is looking. You're just doing it because you want to lead your life. You want to be a victor. You want to be the winner every single day. You're not leaving it up to chance or fate or whatever God you decide to believe in. No, like I am steering this vehicle. I am piloting this flight. You know what I'm saying? And I'm
Yep.
conscious, I am whole, and I'm doing it for me first. The byproduct of that, the cherry on top, the gravy, is if people catch wind of what I'm doing and they so choose to follow on their own volition.
Yes.
Right? And I think sometimes a lot of leadership we see sometimes is we are leading for external reasons as opposed to
Yep.
it being an internal manifestation first. And then the byproduct is the external that you see that looks so pretty.
Yep. Yep. And it goes into what I want to talk a little bit about later, but you
Beautiful.
know, of what makes a good leader.
Mm.
And when you were saying that, what really sticks out to me, and as I think about it, is, I 100% agree that like a lot of times they're doing it. They're doing that work on themselves when nobody's looking. But I think truly, a lot of times, one of the most important traits is, they're putting others before themselves,
Yep.
right? They're not, and that speaks to the external validation that, you mentioned of they're not doing it to be recognized necessarily, right? They're not
Yeah.
doing it or the rewards that go along with it, they're doing it for the people around them.
100%. And what I'll add to that, Jared, is to make
Yeah.
sure that our cups are full before we start leading people, right? Because if our cups
Yep.
are full and we don't know who we are, what we stand for, you know what I mean, and where we want to
Yep.
go and who we want to take with us, well, yes, you can be doing things for other people, which is great. However, you're going to figure out very soon that that can be exhausting, you know?
Yep.
And then the question then is like, are you doing what you're doing for all the right reasons? Because yes, it's
Yep.
noble. Yes, you're helping people, but then you're actually a drowning man can't save another drowning man,
Yep.
right? So
Yeah,
it's just to make sure our cups are full when we're leading, when we're serving, when we're giving.
for sure. And an interesting point that, comes to mind for me on that one though, and one that I've been thinking about is the leaders that, emerge out of great need,
Mm.
in times of emergency or, life or death situations, whatever it might be. And, times when, you know, they really are looking out and for others and have almost no regard for themselves, and sometimes their cup not being full, but, taking that selfless act to step up to save or help other people.
For sure. And that's a very good point as well, because in times of crisis is when we see leadership come to the surface, right? Which is great.
Yeah.
I love that. And yeah, so I guess it's a double-edged sword then in that case, right? It's that healthy awareness
Yeah.
and that healthy blend of like knowing when to, go all in and give your all, but then at the same time, not but, and at the same time, know where your limits are, know what your weaknesses are and where you need help, and then who can help fill in the gap. Because that's the other
Yes.
component, and I know you haven't asked the question yet. However, when it comes to leadership, I think that's a beautiful trait of a leader, is knowing your blind spots, your weaknesses, your gaps, and then surrounding people who you know are great in those areas,
Yes.
right? And then letting them shine. You don't take that away from them. You let them shine and you let people know like, hey, I suck in this area, but Jared is so good and he's on the team and he does
Yeah.
this really well. So I wouldn't be who I am without Jared and his help and what he brings to the team.
Yes.
That to me is quality leadership.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. I'm so glad that you brought that up actually. And it's something, yeah, it's something that I haven't been looking at it in terms of leadership necessarily, but a lot of times when I'm, kind of looking into successful business leaders,
Yeah.
right? And that is one sentiment that I've heard echoed a ton
Mm-hmm.
of the really successful ones. And one that sticks out of my mind was somebody was talking about Oprah,
Yeah.
actually, about, kind of her life off camera,
Mm-hmm.
and how she like she does what she does, one of the best in the entire world,
Mm-hmm.
right? She's one of the best people in the entire world at it. However, she has people around her that are truly amazing at some of the things that she's not as good at.
Yep.
Right. And having that, humility to accept the fact that you are not the best at absolutely everything. And not only, bringing people around you that complement your skills,
Mm-hmm.
but also empowering them, like you said,
Exactly.
right? And not holding them back, not having the fear that, they'll become bigger than you are. And really, wanting them to succeed right alongside with you.
100%. So I need to preface this and say, dude, I don't know if you ever heard of John C. Maxwell. He is a leadership guru. Yeah, leadership guru.
Okay.
The mentorship program that I'm a part of and the people that I associate with are all about John C. Maxwell, Dad. Dude, and a lot of the stuff that I may say is coming from his perspective. So I just want to give that caveat.
Okay.
I'm not that good.
Okay.
I'm not that original. However,
Okay.
yeah, like I agree with that 100%. And how do I say this? I remember hearing once, and it was saying, if you're the smartest man in the room, there's something wrong, right?
Yep.
Or the smartest lady in the room,
Yep.
there's something wrong. You need to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, that are doing things in other arenas outside of what you're doing. And case in point, someone like Oprah, to be able to surround herself with other like-minded individuals that probably, guess what? And for all we know, sometimes with leadership, dude, there is someone who is more qualified in the room, right?
Yep.
However, their leadership skills or their charisma or their character may not be where it needs to be. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And
Yep.
and that also takes grace and humility to know, hey, guess what? You know what? Jared could probably do this job better than Nuke. However, both Jared and Nuke know, given maybe the context or the situation, that yes, Nuke may lead. However, Nuke goes to Jared and runs every decision by him before anything is done. Like, do you see what I'm saying? And that
Yep.
also falls on then Jared to also know that yes, maybe I don't have the spotlight as much as maybe Nuke does. However, I know my role on this team. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or in this season, this is what it looks like. You
Yep.
know? Because
Yep.
because if not, our egos will get in the way. And now,
Yes.
now the mission, the vision, the campaign is at a standstill because egos are clashing.
Yep.
Not
Yep.
because we don't know how to change the world, not because we don't have the tools or resources, no, because egos. So I think a
Yep.
great leader is aware of that and is then able to communicate to the rest of the team, hey, I am nothing without you. I'm sure I could do this by
Yep.
myself. And just like how Andy always says, like a wolf can survive by itself, but it
Yep.
thrives in community. It thrives in a pack, right? And it's that pack
Yes.
mentality. No, like, and you are only as strong as your weakest link, right? Is that how that saying
Yep.
goes? So case in point is to make
Yep.
sure that yes, like I can cover, 180 degrees. But then the other 180 degrees, I need Jared to be willing to look at. I need Andy to be willing to look at. I need Hafiz. I need da 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 da. I need Colin. I need Dea. I need like Sohan and so forth and so on. You see what I'm saying? And
Yep. For
and
sure.
that's that 360 leadership.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. And like that's why I always come back to that humility and why it's so important for everybody,
Yes.
especially leaders in my. And so now, I mean, I think we touched on it a little bit before, but when I ask you, like what is the difference between a leader and a boss?
Yeah.
When I say that to you, what comes to mind?
This it's great. So when I think boss, I think dictatorship right away. Because
Okay.
no, well, not even because that's just what I think. I think boss is like, hey, like you have to do it because I'm saying so, and this
Yeah.
is, and at the same time, like normally with the boss is associated with the job, and the boss is in charge to make sure that everybody is going in the right direction and what have you, right?
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah.
like with the leader, it's like, hey, I like to think we're like you're here because you want to be here. You're here because you believe in the
Yeah.
vision, the mindset, the attitude, you know. And if you happen to be getting paid, awesome, cool, high fives, butt taps, great, But if you're not getting
Yeah.
paid and it's a volunteer thing, well, then you sure as hell better believe in the leadership, right? And the vision and the mindset.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think also like, and again, like nothing against bosses, right? I think
Yeah.
because with King of Hearts and what have you, I'm sure I'm going to be a boss to people eventually, right? To the team that
Yeah.
we,
Yeah.
and I don't want them to think dictatorship, right? Unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, I think with the boss, what has happened is it's been separated from a leader, because you can have a boss that isn't
Yeah.
a leader, right?
Yep.
And it's just unfortunate that those two aren't in unison together and that they're separated.
Yes, for sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's a great point. And that was something that I was going to say was, and in my mind, I really do separate the two.
Yeah.
Of, just because somebody is your boss doesn't mean that they're a leader, and just because somebody is a leader doesn't mean that they're your boss.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And that's where I go back to what we touched on earlier of for me, a leader is somebody that you follow or respect because you want to.
Yes.
A boss is somebody that you follow because you have to.
I agree. Well said. Let's leave it
Yep.
at that. I agree with that 100%.
And so I know that we touched a lot on it kind of as we've been going, but are there any other traits that you find that makes a good leader?
Yeah, man. I think a growth mindset, right? A growth mindset.
Yeah.
One, like it's super cool when you see your leader taking notes on what other people are saying, right?
Yes.
And or like nodding and approving. So like I love that mindset and that attitude. Another trait would be and you said it already, humility.
Yeah.
The ability to know when to say, "Hey, I don't have the answer." And team, let's figure it out together.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a word, and if that's humility, then humility. Humility. That and alongside empathy. Empathy, I believe, is an underrated skill right now.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And I think a lot of the trauma, the pain, the confusion, the miscommunication that we have, whether in any endeavor, anything that involves leadership, empathy should be at the forefront.
Yeah.
Because if it's not, then miscommunication happens, then trust isn't built, then lack of respect is highlighted. You know what I mean? And case in point, the trauma and the pain that we're going through, sitting here, what is it? Beginning of June 2020, and what's transpiring in the US right now. Right? Lack of empathy.
Yeah. For sure.
So,
sorry, I was just going to say, I mean, as you were saying that, especially with empathy of, just because you understand somebody else's point of view doesn't mean that you need to agree with it.
For sure.
Right.
For sure.
And I think at times that's where empathy can get lost. Right. Is, I never understand why they could do that. Right. Again, you don't have to agree with it, but to really work on just understanding, where they're coming from can be helpful in so many different ways.
For sure.
And, going back to, obviously with everything going on in the world today and, the Black Lives Matter movement and all the riots and protests and demonstrations that are going on all over the place here. I think I shared it with you and the group, but the one that really has one of the things that hit me very, very hard was acknowledging somebody else's trauma does not take away from your own. And for me, that goes back to empathy as well.
Sure.
Right. And so that's that. Just while you were talking, that came up for me.
Yeah, Jared, it's super interesting because I think for a lot of people, for whatever reason, they believe, they think, they feel that if I am empathetic towards Nuke and what he's going through, right, that takes something away from me. Or now I have to believe that. And it's like, no, listen, you can And you said it really well. You can understand and acknowledge and see someone and still disagree. And now guess
Yeah.
what? To me, this is where growth and connection can now be at the forefront. Hey, how can we now both mature, grow, evolve so that, you know what, that
Yeah.
miscommunication doesn't happen again? That certain
Yeah.
situation or what have you doesn't happen again, right? So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
with that, to me, it's being okay with having a little bit, as Andy would say, friction. It's being okay. It's
Yeah.
being okay with sitting in the mud with someone and figuring out, hey,
Yeah.
how can we move forward together, unified?
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? So
Yes,
to
for
me,
sure.
having the conflict is natural. We're all human beings. We have different worldviews. We have different scenarios, different nervous systems. So to bring it all together, a true leader is able to sift through all of that, right? And not
Yeah.
allow the nervous system to be triggered and react, but to respond and then be like, hey, how can we now move forward unified together? And if
Yeah.
enough leaders are willing to do
Yep.
that, man, that's the change we all want to see,
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
And I mean, like, I
Yeah.
think for myself, Jared, like, real quick, like, someone who's in a leadership position, I would respect you more and have trust and faith if we both had a disagreement, we sat, we hashed it out, and we had a
Yeah.
conversation and dialogue. And then moving forward, it was like,
Yeah.
hey, man, I appreciate your perspective. I'm glad we were able to come to common ground together. Guess what? In my mind,
Yeah.
in my nervous system, my body, my soul, my mind now knows that I can talk to this individual, male or female, and just have a conversation, have a
Yeah.
dialogue, and know that I won't be what? I won't be judged. I'll be seen. I'll be heard. I'll be respected. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, Jared, isn't that what
Yeah.
we're all looking for? Isn't that
For
all we
sure.
want in any type of connection that we have with people?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. 100%. And when you were saying, being willing to be, sit in the muck with somebody, and it's one of the things that Hafiz has said a couple of times in our conversations is, some of these conversations are supposed to be
Yep.
uncomfortable, right? We need to have the uncomfortable
Yep.
conversations. And it's I'd never heard it put so simply but so
Mm-hmm.
powerfully,
Mm-hmm.
right? And yeah, and like you were saying, a leader is willing to have those tough conversations and willing to set aside initial reactions to truly understand the other point of
Yes,
view.
sir.
And the other thing that's been coming up for me too is almost the definition of
Mm-hmm.
leadership a
Yeah.
little bit, and how, and like we were talking about at the beginning, the idea of we can all be
Yes.
leaders,
Yep.
right? And we can all make those small, seemingly insignificant changes and decisions on a day in and day out,
Yep.
basis. And really, that's what leads to true change.
100%, bro. 100%. You know, and
Yeah.
go
And
on.
I was just going to say, the idea that I feel a lot of people might have is that you need to make this, grand impact or gesture or, whatever it might be. But, truly what will have impact is everybody taking those small steps on a day-to-day basis,
Yes.
like we were
Yes.
talking about. And because a lot of times what happens is in that either paralysis of, I don't know what the grand gesture would be, I don't know what would make an impact, instead of debating it, just taking action with those little actions lead to the big impact, the big gestures.
Exactly, dude. And Jared, like, once again, like, this is the thing that's frustrating for me sometimes, because I'm like, listen, enough of us that are conscious, that are healthy, that are woke, that are aware of the matrix and the systems. We need to continue to educate and communicate to those that are not. Because if not,
Yeah.
then guess what? We are literally witnessing what happens when we don't do anything about these social injustices that have been going on since the 1800s. Case
Yeah.
in point, this is what happens when enough of us are not doing the work internally,
Yeah.
day in and day out, right? And like I always say this,
Yeah.
complacency and mediocrity do not take a day off. You know, the
Yeah.
evil forces of this world, whatever faith you want to subscribe to, they don't take a day off. So then how can we, the ones that are positive and uplifting and what have you, how can we take a day off then? Look what
Yeah.
happens when we take a day off or 2 days off or 3
Yeah.
days off.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And I love how you
Yeah.
alluded to that, Jerry, because that's what it is. It's small, consistent steps done every day when no one is looking. And we all have to be doing that. Not just Jared on his soapbox, not just Martin Luther King, not just Nelson Mandela, not just Obama, not just Oprah, not just Ellen. No, no. Small, consistent steps done every day. What did Gandhi say? Be the change you want to see. It starts with you. And if you're
Yeah.
not, and I always say,
Yeah.
if you're not doing it, then who is? Who is?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know I'm preaching to the choir right now, Jared. I'm fully aware of that.
No, not at all.
Uh,
No, I think honestly, and I think it's those small steps that, I'm definitely guilty of as well,
yep.
right? Of taking those days off,
Mm-hmm.
right? Of, you know, um, going against what my gut tells me, in situations by not speaking
Mm-hmm.
up, right? And it
Yeah.
creeps in. And I think that's the hardest part about complacency is that a lot of times it is that slow
Yep.
creep, right? Of, it's just been
Yeah.
one day, right? And one quickly turns into two, quickly turns into
Yep.
a year.
Yes,
You know what
sir.
I mean? And I think, it is hard because it creeps, there's no smack in the face of, you know, um, you're out of alignment with your core
Yes.
values,
Yes.
right? We crept day in and day out, and you didn't even notice it until one day you wake up and it's all that and having to hit that restart button, and having complacency the other way of again taking it that day by day and doing your best every single day and every single opportunity that you have.
Jared, beautiful. Well said. I love that you brought this to the forefront because you're absolutely right. And my hand is in the air right now. I'm guilty of this as well. Okay? We all are. And this is where you then, not you, Jared, but we each
Yep.
individually need to surround ourselves with community, right? And making sure that we are
Yes.
not the smartest man in the room or the smartest lady in the room.
Yeah.
Because then guess what? Your association and what have you will then be like, hey, Jared, bro, how you doing? You doing okay? Cool. Awesome. Next week, Jared, bro, how you doing? I feel like you're slipping, man. Like, is there anything you want to talk about? Like, I'm just, do you see what I'm saying? And in that moment, boom, Jared,
Yep.
you snap out of it and you're like, oh, you know what? That's a really good point. I have been. Thanks for the gut check. Love it. You see what I'm saying? And it's like, case in point. So
Yeah.
to me, it's like, yes, hence why we need teamwork. Hence why we need connection. Hence why we
Yeah.
need community. Because then guess what? When you do have your off days, right? And hey,
Yep.
Jay, you know what, man? Like, I'm hurting, bro. Like, Am I crazy? Am I losing it? Guess what? Jared with his full fucking cup comes in and is like, dude, you're so good. Let me pour some gasoline on you.
Yep.
Boom. I walk
Yep.
away feeling full and refreshed and seen. I go back on the treadmill and we keep going. If not, if you're the smartest
Yep.
one in the room, if you're the one that always has to be on and high octane, that's
Yep.
draining. And you're going to
Yep.
burn yourself out. You see what I'm saying?
Yep. For sure. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because it brought up another trait for me, of, what makes a good leader is creating that safety to allow for the support,
This is true as well.
right? Of creating that safety that the people around you feel that they can speak up, and whatever it might be, either call you out, right, or point out a blind spot, or even tell you that they are the ones that need extra help right now, right? But if they don't have that safety and they live in that fear of, if I speak up, I might be fired. If I speak up, I'll be ostracized from the group.
Yes.
That also what allows inconsistency
For
to
sure.
creep in and complain.
And you raise a great point of creating a safe space for someone to be able to give constructive feedback and then to be able to ask for help. Because I think if we look back traditionally, and I'll speak for myself, being a male, that like, to ask for help in a leadership role might look like, hey, guess what? This man doesn't know what he's doing, or it questions my masculinity. You know what I'm saying? And so I can get that. However, sitting here in 2020, that needs to change. And you know what? Yes, I am the leader on paper. However, I'm fully aware I need all of you here to be firing on all cylinders. And it is all of us coming together that then produces the work. I just so happen to be, the face of this work. However, I am fully aware and I can communicate on the regular all the people that are contributing. You know what I mean? And I think part of that leadership, that responsibility, is knowing and being able to highlight that every single time. When you're put on the spotlight, hey, I'm just the man, and I'm only here because of the great people that are in my life that I work with. You see what I'm saying? And even that verbiage, of like, that work for me versus I work with, right? My team versus, the employees or the workers. No. It is a team mentality, right? Team mentality every single time. And even for myself, I try to catch myself and be like, yes, like even for King of Hearts and what have you, all the boys there are volunteers. However, it is a team mentality at the end of the day, because I can say confidently, I don't think we would be where we're at if we didn't have all the boys that we have on our team. Right?
For sure. And that, just while you're talking there, brought up something that I've given a ton of thought to recently, that's just been kind of rattling around in my brain, is, again, challenging that idea that the only way to appear strong is to never show weakness.
Hey, man. Yeah.
Right. And like you're saying, especially in, being, in the male culture of never show weakness, never show you're sad, never show, you're tired, you always need to be on, you always need to show what you have and never reveal what you don't have. And the idea of, well, true strength is actually revealing those imperfections, revealing, those weaknesses, and having the belief that you are still strong and powerful with them. Having the confidence that even though my weaknesses, I can still be strong.
So, Jared, great points. I agree with you 100%. And and as a leader,
Yep.
to not give too much, right? Because there are some things that your team doesn't need to know about you, right? And there is a such, well,
What
there
do you
is
mean
a
by
such
that?
thing as oversharing, right? And so
Okay.
I hear what you're saying in communicating,
Mm-hmm.
my blind spots, my weaknesses, and what have you. And it's just
Yep.
making sure that, hey, like, I communicate to the team what they need to know so that we can move forward. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. I think it's definitely a
Yes, of
very
course.
fine line,
Of course.
right? Because it's that idea of showing the people around you that you are still human and that you
Yes.
still struggle, but you are still, or
Yes.
and
There you go.
I'm going
There
to
you
steal
go.
that
There you
from,
go.
are still strong enough for them to lean on
Exactly.
you,
Exactly.
right?
Because that's also part of
Yeah.
leadership. Because then low key, you tell people, hey, can I trust this guy if he doesn't have it all together? You know what I mean? Or if he's slowly losing
Yeah.
his mind.
Yeah.
And yes, he's communicating and letting us know. However, that doesn't make me have confidence in where this plane is going right now. Right? Like
Yeah.
what comes to mind with me is your captain on a plane. You know, things might be
Yep.
going havoc in the cockpit, but when he comes on, right? Good
Yeah.
afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. I just want to let you know that we will be entering some
Yeah.
turbulence now. Nothing to worry about. I would just suggest you put your seatbelts on, and you know what I mean. Like, could you imagine if he
Yep.
came on and he
Yeah.
was the opposite? We would all
Oh
be
yeah.
looking. We would all be looking
Exactly.
for parachutes, strapping
A
them on, and
parachute
like, yo,
up there. Yeah.
I'm taking control of my own life right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, 100%. You're right.
Yeah.
It is a fine line, and
Yeah.
I think for a lot of leadership now, back in the day, it was very black and white. And what I'm learning now is
Yes.
leadership, just like people, is complex and it is multiple shades of gray. And as a leader with
Yeah.
each shade of gray, you need to be willing to respond and not react.
Yep.
And that to me
Yeah.
is another component of great leadership, responding versus reacting. And for those people that don't know what I mean by that is,
Yeah.
reacting to something would be like, "Oh my goodness, what's going on? No one knows what they're doing. Why are you doing that?" etc., 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 right? Versus responding would be,
Yeah.
you've just received some bad news, taking a deep breath. All right, boys, ladies, how are we going to deal with this? Let's start brainstorming.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah. For me, I make the distinction of conscious
Yep.
versus unconscious, right? And so the reacting is your
Yeah.
unconscious reaction, right? It's you're not thinking about it. It's
It's your nervous system
automatic,
talking.
almost, yeah, almost, like
Yes,
knee
knee
jerk
jerk.
reaction. Whereas reacting, or sorry, not reacting, responding is, you know, I
Yep.
see the situation and this is what needs to
Preach.
be done.
I love that. A knee jerk reaction
Yeah.
versus something that's like composed, methodical, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And understanding
Mm-hmm.
the emotion, but being able to take the appropriate emotion
Preach.
towards it. And sometimes that's taking
Yeah.
emotion out of it,
It's knowing where and when.
right? Yeah, exactly. And so the last question that I have is your thoughts on, is leadership born or is it
It
taught?
is taught, sir. It is taught. I mean, can someone be born with a handful of traits, right? Okay, this is the thing.
Yeah.
I like to believe, dude, we are all born with all of the traits to be a great leader. Yes? However,
Yeah.
However, if your
Yep.
upbringing, if the people in your life don't harness that raw natural resources, then of course not, right? Then of course you are not going to
Yeah.
be the best version of yourself at that age, because you look at some, and I'm just going to say kids. You look at some kids and
Yep.
you watch the way they talk and they respond and they lead themselves, and you're like, wow, like that is great. You know what I'm saying? Like who, like, and obviously you just know the
Yeah.
parents, right, are a reflection of that. And then you see some other kids and you're
Yeah.
like, yo, I just know full on in that house, they are not talking about pleases and thank yous and yes, sir, yes, ma'am. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
may I, can I? It's give
Yeah.
me this. I want that. You know what I'm saying? And so to me, it's like, yo,
Yeah.
it always comes down to your association. And if you're around leaders,
Yeah.
you'll become a leader. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I always have a bit of a cop out answer for questions
Why?
like
What's your
this.
cop out
So
answer?
well, for me, it's always the same as the
Yes,
nature versus nurture of it's
for
a
sure.
combination of
Yes.
both, right? And so when I think about are you born a leader or can you
Yeah.
be taught to be a leader? Um, I think about it almost as your potential because I think that there definitely is the biological traits that you can't control that some people are born with to make them very
Yes.
influential leaders. And when I say that, I mean
Yes.
I mean widespread, right? Um, However, everybody, you're born with that potential, but you need to be taught. And of course, there's many different ways of being taught, whether it's by people or whether it's through experience with whatever it might be, to hone in that skill to allow you to reach
Yes.
that potential.
I would definitely agree with that, because then what we're saying is
Yeah.
yes, there are certain genes, DNA that, yes, will allow someone to have, a higher potency for leadership, right? And at the same
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
yes, we'll give them a head start. However, it's the same thing with talent, dude. You can be supernaturally gifted. However, if you don't train,
Yeah.
right, and really
Yeah.
harness the resources you've been given, hard work will
Yeah.
outwork talent you know what I'm saying? If it's not being disciplined correctly.
Yeah.
So I think once
Yeah.
again, it's that fine
And
line, right?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, just when you were saying that, I think it's a quote that I heard way back when. I don't remember it exactly, but is basically just speaking to how common a tale of
hundred
wasted
percent.
talent is, right? Because there is potential and talent in so many people, but like you were saying, hard work always hard work with small talent beats out lots of talent with no hard work
Exactly.
every day of the week.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
Case in point,
Yeah.
man. Same thing with leadership. And the reason why I'll always
Yeah.
say it's taught, because, dude, I'll speak for myself, and I'm sure you'll be able to relate once I say this story. Okay? I always
Yeah.
think back whenever I was playing sports. When I was a first year, man, you don't have any leadership. You might have some leadership with all your
Yeah.
first years that are also on the team, right? Great. Second
Yeah.
year, maybe a little bit more leadership. Coach will ask you a couple things, ask for your perspective, right? Third year, he starts asking you a little bit
Yeah.
more, and he starts grooming you, and you start picking things up. Fourth year, he's like, hey, have you thought about da-da-da-da-da? You know what I mean? And start looking at other aspects of your game.
Yeah.
Starts giving you information to relay to the rest of the team. Then fifth year, guess what?
Yeah.
Guess who's captain now? You see what I'm saying? And so that whole
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
you've been groomed for such a position. Small, consistent steps
Yeah.
over the last 4 years or 5 years of training right? Making it to practice, being that team player, showing up, staying late, training, da, 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 da. And so then finally, when you do become vice captain or captain, guess what? You didn't walk in with that. No, man, you were groomed the whole way through because of your association, because of the potential that was seen in you, just like you alluded to, right? And then at the same time,
Yeah.
and this is the caveat, your willingness towards being better. Because I would say that is
Yeah.
also part of leadership. You need to want that as well.
Yeah.
And then be willing to do the work.
For sure. And yes, which is
Yes.
the kicker, right? Is you can want it all you want, but
Yeah,
you have to
man.
be willing to do the work as well.
Especially if it gets given to
Yeah.
you
And
when you haven't
yeah,
done any work to begin with. You see what I'm saying? Based on just talent.
yeah, yeah. And so for me, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately is the idea of not needing
Yes.
redefining leadership, right? And redefining it around needing a title to be considered a leader or to even
Exactly.
consider yourself a leader, right? And so using your analogy of, when you're playing on a sports team of, just because you aren't named
Yep.
one of the captains doesn't mean you can't still be a
Exactly.
leader. Just because you're in your first year doesn't mean you can't be a leader. You know, you may not have that title of being a captain, but you can still be a leader to the
Exactly.
other rookies. You can still be within your position group. You can still be a leader, to the people that are trying to make the
Yep.
team, right? And bringing that outside, and continuing on with that. You may never have that title of one
Yes.
of the captains, but that doesn't mean that
100%.
you're not a leader, right? And bringing that outside of the sports analogy of, you could be a
Yes.
leader for your family, you could be a leader for your friends group, you could be
Yep.
a leader for one person, and you know that's okay. And not only is that okay,
Exactly.
that's amazing, right? And not getting caught up in, well, I don't have that title, I don't have that position, so I can't be a leader because
Yep.
it hasn't been given to me,
Jared, that's beautiful,
right?
dude. And I completely agree with that, dude, which brings it full circle, dude, to just be like, you got to be willing to lead yourself when no one is looking, right? It's doing that work. So then
Yeah.
guess what? When there is a crisis or when the higher ups see that there's a gap that needs to be filled, they can point and look at you and be like, yo, this guy has been a low key leader the whole time. Awesome. Awesome. He's been
Yep.
grooming himself for this position. So he's obviously a natural fit. He's the best candidate. Right? And to everybody else, they're gonna be like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, you're so lucky. And it's like, no, man. I've been doing this work when no one was looking. And only now
Yeah.
is it
Yeah.
surfacing. Case in point, dude,
Yeah.
a bamboo shoot. It takes 5 years before it ever sprouts. Do you know that? It takes 5 years underground before
Really
it ever sprouts. So therefore, do you sit and be like,
crazy.
oh man, nothing's working, nothing's happening? What if the universe just wants to see whether or not you're for real? Right? Whether or not you're for
Yeah.
real and you're willing to be a leader when no one's looking, so that when you do have the title, you don't get caught up
Yeah.
in the flashiness and the bling. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because that's just as powerful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And that bamboo um analogy really spoke to me. And what came to mind was, just because you don't see it doesn't
100%,
mean it's
bro.
not growing,
100%.
right? Yeah. Yeah. So
You're
that's
welcome,
amazing. I
bro.
love that. Thanks for
You're
sharing that.
welcome.
All right, man. Well, is there anything else that we didn't get to touch on that you want to
I just want
speak
to
to
say,
about
Jared, I
leadership?
think you're a leader. And I love the work that you're doing and how you're stepping out of your comfort zone. And I just want the people to know that are listening. Yes, I know it's your podcast and what have you. And I know that for you it can be a challenge at times, and you continue to step into that. You continue to be outside of your comfort zone and to do what is right regardless of emotion. And that to me is a leader. So to you, sir, if you could see me, I tip my hat off to you.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, actually, I have no idea how much that means. And I really
No worries,
appreciate
bro.
that. And
I see you.
um, I don't know what
I
to
love you too,
say other
man.
than I love
We'll
you.
leave it at
So
that. We'll leave it at that.
amazing. Well, thanks once again.
Yes,
And
sir. Thanks for always having me.
until next time, all right?
Later.